Hey everyone, Ben Belack here, Beverly Hills Super Realtor. Welcome to another drive-through tour of the Hollywood Hills in Los Angeles. Today we are in Laurel Canyon. Laurel Canyon really became a nexus for counterculture and counter attitudes in the 60s and 70s when so many famous rock and rollers decided to call it home. Like Jim Morrison of the Doors, Joni Mitchell, Bonnie Raitt, members of the Eagles, Neil Young. And despite the glam of the Sunset Plaza portion of the hills, immediately to its west, it really has kept the culture of being a place for young creatives to call home and get a little bit of peace from the city. So with that, I'm going to turn around the camera and give you my point of view and talk you through. So I'm currently on Crescent Heights, but as I cross over Sunset Boulevard, we're now on Laurel Canyon, which is geographically central, not just east-west of the western side of the Hollywood Hills, but also north-south between West Hollywood, the Strip, and Beverly Hills. And if I were to continue going straight, I would ultimately and quickly end up at the studio. So it's a great location for anywhere you have to go. We are about to approach the entrance to Mount Olympus, which I brought up before on many of my videos. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but just to kind of give you a geographical milestone here, Mount Olympus is an area that has certainly gotten a lot of acclaim lately because of its massive views, wide streets, and buried power lines. But this video is about Laurel Canyon, so let's continue. Because of the topography, generally speaking, it's hard to be neighborly in any of the Hollywood Hills locations because you have to walk up and down the mountain to engage with your neighbors. It's not easy to do that or necessarily fun, showing up at your neighbor's door sweating. Laurel Canyon, if any of the hills sub-neighborhoods has that neighborly culture, that's where you'll find it. And part of that is because it has an amazing school in the middle of it, which we'll talk about later. But back to the culture, they even made a movie about it with Christian Bale with the title Laurel Canyon. Speaking of that movie, it had Kate Beckinsale in it. We're about to drive by a house that Kate Beckinsale's ex-husband Len Wiseman purchased that I represented the sale of when Serge Azria decided to build a spec home of 6,000 square feet just off Laurel Canyon. So as we continue up here, you can see it's kind of narrow and winding. It's got a good amount of traffic. That's because it's a main artery here, getting from Los Angeles as we know it into the San Fernando Valley. Now, in the middle of Laurel Canyon, there is a market and a restaurant called Pache, which is pretty good. But unlike most areas of the hills, if you need to grab some milk for the morning, you got to go all the way down. At least you've got a market here. The first part of Laurel Canyon, of course, is Kirkwood, which we're about to pass the entrance of. And we're not going to do too much touring of Kirkwood today, but understand it's mostly small houses that are fairly close together. And because Laurel Canyon overall is pretty mountainous, as the Santa Monica mountain range runs through it, in most areas the lots are small, so that means the houses have to go up. I'm wondering, are any of you dizzy yet? So it's not necessarily ideal for people that don't want to be going up and down steps. Now, there are a few areas where that's not the case, and we're going to drive by some of that today. But as we continue to the area focus that we are going to be focused on today, I want to point out that there are 4 main arteries in Laurel Canyon. The 4 main arteries of Laurel Canyon are: 1, where we're about to enter at Lookout Mountain; 2, Stanley Hills, which loops all the way around up a street called Wyndham. It then forks into Beach Knoll, which ultimately becomes Davies. And I think this is probably a great time to show 2021 Davies, which has on fire 4K views. Insane. But you got to be willing to drive up a very winding road to get there. But in exchange, you will get some value. Speaking of which, because of the topography that I mentioned before and the house's size being generally on the smaller size, I would say usually around 2,000 square feet, give or take, it makes this section of the Hollywood Hills and further Los Angeles as a whole a bit more affordable. So a lot of people, when they're buying that starter home, they will buy somewhere in Laurel Canyon. The second artery is Stanley Hills, which we're about to passed by and I just explained. The third artery is Wonderland Avenue, aptly named for the street that the school is on. And you'll see Lookout Mountain, it will continue on and up to our left, and you'll be able to see that the houses are really kind of stacked and parking's pretty impossible, certainly on the lower side of it. These aren't streets that have views, although you do get some quiet. If I were to continue straight ahead here, you would see Wonderland Elementary, which is one of the best elementary schools in the state. And the reason why people like moving here is because overall the schools, the public schools in Los Angeles, aren't great compared to other metropolitan cities, and people would rather put the equity into their home instead of private school. So as we continue around the school here on Wonderland Avenue, actually I sold the second house up here on the left. It's funny because the buyers are so chic, they painted their house black, and then their neighbors thought it looked so good they did the same thing. So as we go up here, I was talking about arteries of Laurel Canyon. And I didn't mention Laurel Pass, which connects directly to Mulholland, so you can go easily to the 101, to the studios, or into Beverly Hills. And also, I guess Allenwood's part of that too, which also leads to Mulholland, but also into Laurel Hills, which is the second most pedigreed part of Laurel Canyon. And I'm going to take you to the other one right now, known as Wonderland Park, aptly named for Wonderland Park Avenue that runs through it. You know, when people move to Los Angeles and they think about architecture, you know, what they really think about is mid-century modern. And I think anyone could make a really good argument that mid-century modern architecture, its epicenter is in Los Angeles or Palm Springs. So as we head all the way up here, we're going to turn onto Wonderland Park Avenue. And aside from the mid-century modern architecture, it has a couple other things that make it special and unique. What's unique about Wonderland Park Avenue as we continue up is that unlike some of the streets I've already talked you through and you've seen, the lot sizes are larger and more flat. So in this case, these lots are generally on the 11,000 square foot side, which in a neighborhood that is tremendously mountainous, it's a lot. But as we come up here on the left, case study house number 21, and if you want to see cool mid-century modern architecture, you should Google the case study houses. We can talk about that in another video, but just to give you some perspective on how highly sought after these homes are, it was like, I think 1,300 square feet and traded for like $4 million. It's that type of rare brand name pedigree. It is the Bailey House on Wonderland Park. So if you feel like checking that out, you should. But there are amazing single level mid-century modern homes on both sides of the street. It's not a view street. And the one thing I will say is that, look, once you start really getting close to $3 million at the time of the making of this video, 9041 Wonderland Park, I sold this house twice. You know, you really start to lose the buyer pool because the people that don't want to be, you know, I don't want to say taxed because it makes people think about taxes, but who don't want to pay a premium for the school, they'd rather get amenities like view or land in other places. So as we wrap around Green Valley here, we're going to go the back way to Laurel Hills, which is full of larger homes with great views, some sidewalks, buried power lines. But the first thing we will do is turn left here on Crestview. As many of you will be shocked to hear, in this mountainous region, there's a pretty great tennis club. It's called the Mulholland Tennis Club, and it has a wonderful pool with tremendous views as its backdrop. Now, we are about to turn left onto Skyline, where Pharrell Williams is selling one of his digs for $10 million, which is a very, very high price for this portion of the hills, although it commands it. It's on 1.5 acres, which is a very large lot for this area. There's tremendous views, and it was built by Starchitect Hagi Belsberg, and it has been in many publications and has received many awards. So I'm excited to see where that ends up trading ultimately. But look, as you can see already, look at the relief. You know, we were kind of driving through these windy roads. Houses were all around us, kind of tightly packed in, but now this has a little bit more of a neighborhood feel. As we turn left onto this short, small street, I guess I can say now, since it's far in the past, I sold this house to Jack Dorsey and then sold it for him again a year later. And what's cool is Edwin, straight ahead here, ends in a cul-de-sac to the left. So super quiet right here, but also this is very close to the Burbank Airport, as well as the 101, the studios. So easy from up here. But as you can see, the houses here, many of them are single story, and they are larger. The other thing I'll note is the views are really special up here. In fact, I prefer them. When you're looking south from the other portions of the Hollywood Hills, it's all city views. Here you get this insane mountain range and the valley as well. So you do get city lights, but also nature. And I love it. I absolutely love how beautiful it is. The sunsets are incredible because of the orientation the sun is in the sky where it sets in relation to the mountains. So I am about to end this tour as we approach Mulholland. Of course, if you are looking to buy or sell in the Los Angeles area, Beverly Hills, Hollywood Hills, Santa Monica, or Malibu, you can reach me by the links below. For now, on this early June gloomy day, I'm going to enjoy the twists and turns of Mulholland and drop into my office in Beverly Hills. I hope you enjoyed this driving tour.